Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar looking at AIM Bootcamp. We're going to spend the next hour looking at how to best get started with AIM within Unleashed Software. My name is Richard, and I'm product owner for Advanced Inventory Manager. I'll start off by saying I apologize. I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold. So if I do pause for a moment and clear my throat, I'll try and mute myself as we go through that. To spare you the gory details, but we'll also be able to take your questions in the webinar. So in the Zoom software, we have the Q&A panel. Ask questions. I'll try and leave as much time as I can at the end of the webinar to go through your questions. Yeah, so basically today we are looking at a bootcamp with AIM, which is getting up and running with the biggest bang for your buck, or the time that you're expending on this system. So I'll just start off by mentioning a few things as we go through. So it won't hopefully be death by PowerPoint. It will just be a bit of an overview as to what we're going to be covering. AIM is a fairly involved system, so it actually will be 2 sessions. We'll have another session in a couple of weeks. So we're really just going to focus on some of the insights and really the modeling process, because that's an existing workflow within Unleashed that we can really augment by using Advanced Inventory Manager. Excellent. I'll just make sure. Yep. So I've got the Q&A panel open. Brilliant. So the first thing that we'll look at is really around why you would use AIM, and this would be well, with Unleashed, it's a very good system for running your business. It creates transactions. It can measure a lot of things and help you report on how your business is performing and help you run that business. So really with AIM, what we're doing is we are taking the recording of what is happening and the ability to actually run that business, and we're enhancing it to add in a layer of intelligence around what you should do in terms of stock management. So instead of just managing your stock, it's actually helping you make important decisions around that. So hopefully from this, you'll see that you can improve your sales by having the appropriate stock on hand. If you don't do that, then you're less likely to actually win business, but also improve cash flow. So if you have the right stock on hand, but some of it is excessive, then that eats into your cash flow, and nothing drives a business out of business and into insolvency faster than really poor buying decisions with unhealthy stock. So those are a few big ones. Other things we'll cover briefly would be things such as a stock out risk that we can highlight with AIM. AIM is very time sensitive. We'll probably cover that a lot more in the next session, looking at forecasting and production planning. But in here within AIM, we are able to do some cool things with insights that we'll cover off, maybe just a few highlights that we can get started with. You can save time managing a lot of complexity with AIM. So we see a lot of people struggling with spreadsheets and manual processes, so we can remove a lot of that effort. We also have stock health issues. So being able to report on the situation, we'll cover some of those basics in this session today as well. So having a picture of what your stock position looks like, and focus in on issues that you could probably solve once you're aware of them as well. Some of the things that AIM can do for you that we probably won't cover too much in this session, but the next one will be things like planning for seasonality or growth of new products, and the production planning side of AIM as well. So with that in mind, we'll push forward, and just to cover off some of the questions that you can ask, jump in with the Q&A panel that we have inside of Zoom. But you also get access to us via email. So you can email bootcamp@unleashedsoftware.com. You can play along as much as you like with maybe some simple examples as I go through, just showing you things inside my trial account. But also feel free to just take notes or watch. And if you play with us over the next month or so, then you can email us on bootcamp at Unleash Software. The other thing I'd mention is if you've come to us, I imagine most of you are looking at the system because you are new to AIM and you've signed up. So you'll have probably, if this is your first time adding AIM, you'll have a month trial. And if you are in the session and you don't have AIM, but you're considering it, the first time you sign up, you get that first month free. So feel free to jump in and take a look. So no, we're not at the Q8, but I will jump across to my browser if I can find it. I'll be that one there. Okay. If you can't tell by how dark it is around me, it is very late at night here in New Zealand. So hopefully you're not struggling too much with the New Zealand accent as well as a bad throat. So I will hide the video. So we'll jump right into AIM and get started with the bootcamp. So there's a few things that I would cover off just before we jump into actually doing things inside of AIM. So a big one would be around the fact that you have this process with modeling and a process with forecasting. So we're going to cover modeling. And in modeling, we're really looking at setting stock limits. And that's highlighted here in the AIM activity panel. So we're interested in stock limits, and I can see 87% of my products have stock limits. So 13% of my products are missing stock limits. And similarly, we're very interested in lead days, and I can see some of my products are also missing lead days. And by lead day, I mean the delivery time for a product. So if we jump into a particular product, we will look at, this is a forecast. We're not going to cover forecasting, but I just use that as a shortcut to get to the product record. There's a few things that you should set up within your Unleashed account, depending if you're a new account that's just getting started, or maybe you don't use all of the details in Unleashed, and so there might be some things that are missing that an AIM would make best use of. So I'll cover some of this. And so in here we have the type of product that is over on the right-hand side. And I have set this to be an assembled item or a component. Do this appropriately. If you just make everything an assembled product or a component, that would make it quite difficult to differentiate. And I'll give you an example of that. You might have something that you assemble and sell on the fly. And so you want stock levels of the components, but when it comes to the finished product, you want to filter to those products and maybe have a very low stock strategy. And so this allows you to do that. You could differentiate between those two products. What some people do is they will set these flags on for all products, and that just gives you some bad data. So it's easy to do that. I don't entirely know why, apart from you can do it. So some people do, just to make sure it never pops up as an error at some other point. Similarly, we have product groups, and we now have product subgroups, and very soon we will have brand. So you could say different ways of differentiating between your products. Go ahead and set up your product subgroups. It will probably take a wee bit of time to set up the existing subgroups and add them to all of your products. You could use spreadsheets to do that, but it could be a little bit of an effort. We don't have subgroups in AIM right now, but we are adding it right now. So just bear in mind that if you go through that effort, you will be able to use it in other parts of Unleashed very soon. Okay, so the other side of it that we'll just talk about here is some of the mechanics that we'll be working with modeling. So I have a minimum stock level and a maximum stock level. That's very important with managing stock, that you set that what we call stock limits. If it is high or low, so the stock available is below the min, you have a low stock alert. This one is high because the available quantity is above the maximum limit. So that's fairly straightforward, and we use that a lot. So just something to be aware of. The other thing that you should really make sure that you have for your products as appropriate is a default supplier. And this allows you to filter to products such as all of my products that come from one supplier, uh, take a week. And so you'd be easily able to filter in AIM and set up your strategy and incorporate the fact that it's a 1 week delivery window. Very good. So we'll just cover off a few other things if I can remember where it is. Configuration. Yes. So not everyone does this, and I would recommend it actually that if you have multiple warehouses, you turn on per warehouse controls. And what that'll allow you to do is set up a, uh, a min-max level per warehouse. If you don't turn this on, you'll have essentially one warehouse called global, and you'll be managing the min-max um, stock limits um, on the global stock on hand. And if you have 10 warehouses, there'd be no control as to, do you have the right stock in the right warehouse? You'll only have the control as do you have the right amount of stock globally. So if those warehouses are at different ends of the country or the world, then that's not going to help you too much. So do consider turning this on. If you have one warehouse, then you don't need to worry about that too much at all. Okay, the next thing just to be aware of will be, and I'll cover this as brief as I can, is if you're new to Unleashed, you're not going to have a lot of history to work off, so you can import your historic data. It will only be within the AIM and the business intelligence module, but this is useful if you have sales history and the rate of demand of a product, is recorded, but that's from maybe a previous system or on spreadsheets. So in here, what you can do is you can import the historic data. Everybody, doesn't matter how experienced you are, will need to refer to the definitions. So if I jump in here, for example, there's a particular date format. Some of these are mandatory fields, some of them aren't. So it doesn't matter who you are, I still get it wrong. And you'll need to refer to that as you're filling in some of those details. I think I have an example. Yeah, I've got a couple of examples. So this is what it looks like when it's filled in. It's not fun, but it's a very useful tool. For the purposes of AIM, if we're just after what the rate of demand history is, you could shortcut the process by having a single sale for a quantity of product, the quantities there, per month. Because we're really interested is how many do you sell a month. So in terms of the invoices, there's actually two spreadsheets. The other one is the sales orders. They're very similar. I just duplicate the same details essentially in both of the spreadsheets, and I do one sale to a made-up customer per month. If you're using our business intelligence module, then you would want all the fine detail. But for this, for AIM, you could shortcut the process and just essentially create a sale for each month. Okay, so once you've got that, you'll actually have a whole lot of history, even though it's not really in the account, it will be within AIM itself. So let's just cover off what the process is if you're going to use modeling, which is one half really of what AIM does. So the process will be that we calculate and set those stock limits, which give us a min and a max, and that will push this stock limits bar here towards 100%. And any products that are missing their lead days, we can add those in as well. That will push that to 100%. We have a third bar here. We're not covering forecasting, but just to see, I've got 16 products, which are 61% of my revenue that have a forecast. So really with forecasting, you want to focus on the most important products to your business. And we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks in the next session. So once we've got these stock limits, then we have the reorder report, which will monitor what our stock levels are. And I will just filter to a particular product group that's pretty small and maybe even just, if I can remember, yeah, one warehouse. everything, maybe just everything. And that should just give us 4 products. One of them is new, so it doesn't have any stock limits yet. Well, it's actually 0. The other ones have min-max stock limits. We have stock on hand, or we don't. We have 2 low stock alerts. And I could tick some boxes here to say, let's assemble this product, or let's purchase these products, or up here, reorder, filter it by supplier, and generate a replenishment of stock. But what we're really doing here is we're calculating what the appropriate stock level will be with AIM. So this is the process after the fact. It would rely heavily on the reorder report. If you don't look at the reorder report every day, like I do, we do have in here a dashboard to say, hey, you've actually got a whole bunch of low stock alerts or high stock alerts. And that would be stock above the max. So you could also run the reorder report with a few different options. So if you're bringing in a container load of product from a particular supplier, you could say, show me everything I get from that supplier which is under the max. So this is like, you might have some products which are low stock, but you might have some products which are just below the max, and you could top it up to consolidate on the freight, and away you go. So keep that in mind. And what I will do very briefly as well is, if you have the business intelligence module, I'll just show you a little known secret. There is a notifications panel in here, and you can set up notifications in here to include the low stock alert. So you could have a weekly or a daily email that says, this is how things are progressing. These are the alerts that you have, and these are the low stock alerts that you have, or expiring batches or things like that. So if you don't know about that being part of the business intelligence module, and you're using this whole modeling and reorder report process, you could push that as part of these emails. Very good. I will cancel that. Okay, back to AIM. So let's step forward a little bit here into the next step, which is modeling. So the first stage of modeling really is to select what you're going to model. So I'll just talk about very similar. I could select a warehouse that I'm responsible for, and maybe that same product group. And that really filters the page really just down to those 4 products. So what I could do here is, if I wanted to model the correct stock level for these products, I could click this modeling button here, and that will load them into the modeling page, and we can start working on them. If you haven't done that, so I could click clear, you could just start from the modeling tab. You could click on what I just did, or there's also the added option to work with the chart filters. So I mentioned earlier that you might want to say, which products are assembled items, which products come from a particular supplier. So I could start clicking on some of these charts to say, actually, I want to look at all of the products which are missing the lead days, or things like that. So you can start clicking and then click apply. So I'll just back out of that, and I'll use a lot of these are multi-select as well. So keep that in mind. So I will filter it just down to one warehouse, a very simple example. And I will just not change the lead days value right now. So this is displaying for me the current settings of these 4 products. One more thing, and this is actually just released today, is that now AIM will include products that have no stock on hand and no demand. So no history of the product. And we call these catalog products. So they're sort of like, you've listed them on the catalog, but you've not got the stock, and no one's ever bought it according to whatever the date range is. So you could include this if you wanted to. The calculations will always come out to 0, that you'll see a little bit later on, but you might have a good reason for wanting to manually manage these, or just see them. If you turn this off, then that last product will just disappear, because, and this might help you work with a smaller set of products that you really want to keep in stock. It's up to you. So just keep that in mind. That is a toggle which you now have available. Okay, so let's start thinking about what is the correct amount of stock to hold for these products. So I will go to the stock strategy panel, and I'll just explain how the strategy works. So if we look at the main one that you should really use is just in time, and it will hard code the amount of stock that you need to cover the lead days. So if it takes a week for stock to arrive and you sell one a day, then the minimum quantity at which you reorder stock will be set to 7 units, because 1 times 7 is 7 units. And what you can decide from that point is that, how many extra days of stock do you want to cover to hold above that, which will set the reorder point. So let's say it's 7 and it takes me 3 days to create a purchase order. So that means we're essentially increasing it to 10 days of stock, because we might need to negotiate a price, or I don't look at the reorder report every day, or maybe my customer's demand is up and down, and it might spike. So this will set the reorder point to, this product being a 7-day lead time plus 3, it'll be 10 days of stock as a minimum. This product here, it might have a 20-day lead time. So I could just type that in. And now this will be 23 days of stock for this product, because we want 3 extra days above the 20-day delivery window. And if it's selling 1 a day for the rate of demand, then it will be 23 units as a minimum, because that takes longer. Okay. The next question here is, what is the max buffer of stock? And what we mean by that is from the reorder point to the maximum stock level, how many days of stock do you want to hold? So depending on how frequently you want to order, this could be a value that's particular to the freight costs and how local the supplier is and how often you order from them. If you're importing around the world, some people buy 6 months of stock. That's fine, but I'll just put in here 30 days of stock, please, and then I'll calculate that. That will overwrite my lead days value, but that's all right. I will say, let's overwrite all the lead days. And this is particularly useful if you're filtered to a supplier. You could say, override all. I know all of these products take 7 days. Or you could say, just fill in any missing days. Instead of adding in 7 days, I could just say, use the actual delivery time from the history of the product. Let me calculate that. And away it goes. So that has changed the values because, okay, so a lot of these have a 1-day lead time. Let's use 7. So the changes are in bold. So you can see, this was already 7 days, so it's not bold, it hasn't changed. This one has a 0 rate of demand. So the calculations are 0 times whatever days of stock, it's always going to be 0. If I wanted to, I could overwrite that by clicking on these underlined fields. If we scroll down, we have a summary, which you should check out. It's also in the submission box. But if we look at if all 4 of these products are at their minimum stock level at the same time, the value currently will be $11,500 worth of stock. This new calculation, if all 4 of those products are at their minimum stock level, it'll be $3,000. This is New Zealand dollars for me, dollars worth of stock. So this is a massive reduction in the stock on hand. If all 4 of the products are at the max level, it would, and currently the settings are 50. The new settings I've just calculated, it'll be down to 12. So much leaner stock holding for these products if this strategy works for us. So something to look at there. And what I'll do is I will, actually, what I'm going to do just to highlight this is let's talk about the rate of demand. So this rate of demand column here is according to the last 12 months of history. Now, if you've just imported 12 months of history, that's great. But maybe the product has been super popular in the last 3 months. And so it might be more appropriate to have the rate of demand from a different period of time. And you can see actually 3 of the products have not sold in the last 3 months. So now it's saying don't have any stock of these because no one actually wants them anymore. If we go into the toolbar, I will have a more simplified view than you guys do. because I have customized the columns that I'm showing, and I'm really just showing, I've saved it as a simple stock limits, and I've shared that with my colleagues, so you can do the same. But if I change this to the standard default view, you'll see this 3-month history of this product looking good, and then just a flat line for these ones. If we change this back to 12, we'll see that, yeah, they were popular, and then they're flatlined. So you can see how that portrays. And that's the reason we include this demand trend, because this is an average, and this gives you a lot of context around that average. Okay, sorry about that. And so, yeah, when we hit submit, that will take the new settings, and you can see once again a summary. It is a massive reduction in the value, so you see that indicated here. Don't particularly know why it's red. I think if it goes up, it's green, and if it goes down, it's red. But don't take that to heart. It should, yeah, it's probably both of them are neutral. So we've got 4 products. You could name this in the log. So I will say that this is my summer modeling for juice. That's a bit of a weird name, but never mind. But that'll be submitted, and you can see these are now the new current values. If I go to the review tab, you'll see that we have an entry for these 4 products. We can see all of the details, who did it, and if you wanted to, you could see all the fine details. But this is something we'll talk about next, which is those particular stock settings are appropriate according to the rate of demand as of right now. So if the product was selling at 1 a day and I wanted 10 days stock as a minimum, if in a month's time or whatever time it's selling at 2 a day, then I don't have enough stock to cover a 7-day delivery window, because it will be, out of stock by a couple of days if I'm selling 2 a day and holding 10 as a minimum. So we have this review process in here to help you re-synchronize your stock limits with maybe the existing or a different strategy, but particularly if the rate of demand changes. And that's what we see with this here, about how much has the rate of demand changed and does it need review. So you want to look at that and say, okay, we did want to hold 30 to 50 in stock, but now it should probably be 20 to 45 or something like that. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a moment here and review your questions, which are looking fantastic. They're coming in. Can we get sent the recording? I didn't organize the webinar, so I'm going to assume yes. I don't know if it's emailed to you or just to the people who don't attend. But if you don't get a recording, email bootcamp@unleashedsoftware.com and request it, and the marketing guys will be happy to send you a link to the recording. Next question. We have a lot of SKUs that we cannot repeat order. How should we set the limits and the lead days for these products? If you have unique SKUs, I would potentially, yeah, so sort of depends on the product. Let's say you've got old unique SKUs that you never want to see again, and the system will look at them having a rate of demand, set stock limits, and then that will cause low stock alerts, and that will just be a pain. What you could do if those unique products are done is obsolete them, and then they're excluded from AIM. The other thing you could do is you could filter to those products and set a strategy of 0 days of stock, and that will zero out the stock limits. And then you would only have a stock alert if they get like a back order and go negative stock. But you could look at that and be like, no, we don't do that anymore. So there's a few options there. We certainly have people who model components that they hold in stock, and then they build the finished product as it sells, so like a bundling process. So similarly, they will do a strategy of the finished product as 0 days of stock, really, because they just make it as they sell it as an auto assembly. And then they filter to the component products, and they set a strategy of holding 30 days of stock for those products, because that's what they want to stock, and they sell the thing and build it straight away, and then it's back to zero stock. So similar to that. Okay, next one here. Can product groups be made a mandatory field to be entered? Not currently, but that's an interesting feature. We are looking at all of your feature requests, so pass through the support. It might be up here in the question mark as well, that you have submit a feature idea. All of that gets collated and analyzed. So definitely put that in if you haven't, and I'll take that away as well, that you want that. So yeah, thank you for that. Where is the reorder put? I have no min-max stock, so is it not visible? No, it should definitely be visible to everybody. I have a shortcut, so I probably cheated a little bit by, you can customize these shortcuts to the pages you use, but it's down in reports, purchasing, and reorder report. So you can bookmark that one there. But that's where you find it, reports, purchase, reorder report. And I see the next question is, never mind, I just found it. So apologies for not reading that question first. So the next question is about sending an automatic email. We've covered that briefly. Will brands be under the modeling tab eventually? Yes. First is coming subgroups. In fact, I might be able to show you a screenshot. Maybe not. Oh, that's a shame. I thought I had a screenshot. I must have closed it. But essentially, you'll have the product group selection here. You'll be able to indent and expand and choose the subgroups. And we'll add brand in. That'll take quite a bit longer because it's not out yet, and we have to build it into AIM as well. Okay, moving on. Oh, we've got interesting feedback about the color blindness. I'll take that on board with the product designer. So if you have, a lot of stock made to order, I did just cover that. The stock that's made to order, you really want to have that as 0 days of stock as the strategy. The components themselves, you can manage the stock levels of those. If you are assembling within Unleashed, that will create demand on the components. And it's probably worth covering that now as we move on, which is some of the situations that people can manage using this process. So I'll just hide that toolbar. So you may have a situation where you have a build to order. You filter the products which are the finished products, and then you set the stock level of the finished product to be 0 days of stock, and then strategize of how many days of stock you want to hold of the components. And for the components, you are able to organize one site as a warehouse, but also manage the amount of demand that you have for multiple warehouses. So in here, I can do a few things. So maybe a different situation, for example, you could have a sales locations and then a centralized production site. So if I filtered the modeling page here to this one warehouse, go to the demand and say, well, this one location holds stock for multiple sales warehouses and showrooms in the local area. So I could say, I want to take the demand of these locations and calculate based off that. And you'll see, perhaps, if there is demand in those locations, the stock limits now change. So the stock level that you're holding for this warehouse is according to the strategy, the rate of demand, times or the demand for these 4 locations. And some people were asking for a global rate of demand because they want to hold stock for the whole company, but just in the main warehouse, but they could sell it from all sorts of different places. So you could just take all of them as well. There is another option here, which is if you have a factory that's assembling items and you transfer stock to other warehouses, transfers don't create demand unless you tick this particular option. So you definitely wouldn't do both of these because that's sort of like double counting. But if I turn this on, now for this particular warehouse, any sales or usage in production and also stock transfers calculate as demand. And the reason we don't have this on by default is that we have a lot of people that have offsite storage. So we might have the Auckland warehouse where I am and the Auckland bulk, storage location. So if I transfer stock into a shed or a storage location and transfer it back, both of those actions count as creating demand. And if you ping pong stock around between warehouses, you will have a real miscalculation on what the demand is. So you don't want to do that. But you might have a situation where you have a factory where you don't do any transfers apart from just transferring it out, and you want the option to include those stock transfers as demand. But like I say, you could select all the other warehouses that sell it from there and apply that as the demand location. So keep that in mind. Okay. We just check. Uh, So we've got a question that's coming around forecasting. We're really covering forecasting in the next session. So if we have sales orders placed in the future, actually, this is a little bit of a different question. For assembled products, can AM tell us what we need to purchase? That is very much the forecasting side. So if I click on this product, it will open the forecast. And the answer to your question is yes, you'll see the future all planned out, including open transactions, but we're not going to cover that in this session. It might be worth if I just also show you a slightly different example because it's kind of on the agenda as well, is this stock out risk panel. And the fact that AIM through the forecasting system is able to plot the stock movement of every transaction on the date that it's planned to occur. And then around that plan, okay, when do you need to do more work based off where you're likely to fall out of stock based off your forecast demand. So that's in here. But what this is doing is plotting all of the transactions, stock in coming in and going out. So for example, if next week I have a sales order to go out and I've got no stock, and stock is arriving after that date on a purchase order, then I've got a stock out risk because I've got no stock. I need it on that date. The stock won't be here according to the ETA of the purchase order or the assembly job. So we have a stock out. So if I click here, it will open its forecast and it will open one of the charts that you can pull up and you can see what our stock on hand currently is. And I can see here the open transactions. Some of them are overdue actually. So they're sort of assumed to go out ASAP. And we have sales orders going out that you can see the numbers dwindling. But when we get to here, we have not enough stock. So here we're at negative 22 units. And we have another sale, well, actually 4 sales going out on this day that we can't fulfill. And I have stock coming in. So based off this, you could look at AIM every day and say, okay, where are we misaligned with our delivery dates or customer commitments? And this is assuming just the open transactions. So it doesn't assume that demand is going to eat away your stock. It will be a little bit more firm on what is really booked in. And so I could move this purchase order to be over here, or I could create a new one, or I can move the sales over here. Whatever I want to do to solve this problem is up to you. But this is just letting you know that you do have this issue. Okay. So I'll just jump back to the questions again. Can you obsolete stock that has transactions against it? No. No, you can't. You would have to have no stock, no transactions, and then you can obsolete it. Where can I set min stock in the system rather than upload the template? So if you don't want to upload the template, obviously you could use the modeling page here. You can overwrite these values and submit, but you really should use the calculation. If you wanted to do that manually, you would go into well, it's probably easier if I just open the product record from with a name, inventory tab, and it's down here. Can a report of those stockouts be generated on instead of looking at a product by product? Not currently. This is fairly new, so it isn't really a report. It's just, yeah, basically an insight would be probably a better way of thinking about it. That said, it is based off open transactions, so you shouldn't have a huge number of them. And the last question we have here is the date taken for the stockout calculation based on the required date? Yes, it is. Uh, and can we enter a different date? So they'll be, yeah, it's probably best to check the documentation on that one. They'll be using the ETA of the purchases, the required date of the sales order, and things like the assembly finishing date as well. I don't think that's currently customizable. Very good. Okay, so let's take a look at that review process. So you've got a few quick filters in here. You could filter it to show a lot of detail. But if I jump to the insights as well, there is a repeater panel here, an insight of your transactions. So we have the controls status. And so in here, like I said before, if a product has, a rate of demand of 1 per day, and that changes to 2 per day, then the stock levels, potentially the limits might need to double. And so the control status will come up saying that it needs review. Similarly, if you submit your modeling, then you will have the option of setting a timer as to when you want to review it. And you can see in this situation, both of them have triggered. So in here, you could filter to just see those ones by clicking these buttons. And these are all of the expired ones. So if it is a modeling transaction, you'll see in here it says model. So we'll just show all. The thing is with these products is that one of the products may have flatlined and nobody wants the product anymore. So you might have a max decrease of the products in that group. You might have a maximum decrease of what 100%, and another product at the same time might have increased in demand by 1,000%. So you can see that here, negative 100 and plus 115,000. I guess that things are going well for one of those products, and that's why it needs review. So you can check the details on this as well. But what you could do is you could go through and you can say that you want to review this. I'll review modeling, and it will just simply pop up with the recalculation. So if you're just interested in taking the existing strategy, multiplying it by the current rate of demand, you can click review and then submit, and you're done. And that's it. It will go through. If you click review and you think, actually, I want to change the strategy in this product, you could hit edit and it will load the product back into the modeling page. So you can go through the process of editing the strategy, and away you go. Okay, we've got a question here about the other types of strategies, which I have neglected. I think the best strategy to use is just in time, because that will lock in the lead days for each product. So if I have some products in here, we might have different lead times in here. You can see that in this list. So if we look at a minimum buffer of 7, then that will give us 10 days of stock or 21 days of stock appropriate to that product, having that buffer above whatever the lead time is. You could go for the stock days strategy, and if 3 days plus a 7-day buffer equal 10 days, this skips that first step. So you can type in here just 10 days. But the problem is that might work for this product to have 10 days as a minimum, but this one has a lead time of 14 days. And so you don't get the option of saying what the lead days is plus a buffer to get an appropriate min-max for every product. You would just be putting in here, I want 30 days as a max and 10 days as a minimum. And that might not work for a large list of products with very different lead times. So this might be easy to understand though, and we use this in the forecasting process that we'll look at next time. But you could use this if you wish. The next option down is to just enter in the actual quantity directly, which is not super useful most of the time. But if you did just wanted to lock in a particular min-max and apply that in bulk, and you don't want to use a spreadsheet to upload a template of changes, you could do this here. So you can skip the calculation entirely. But like I say, just for today's purpose, play around with a simple single product example, potentially of a product, and I would just stick to the just-in-time strategy to get used to that. Okay, more questions are coming in. Can a product be assembled product and a component? Yes, I think is the simplest answer. Don't know if there was more to that question. So I guess if you think about it, if you have an assembled product, its demand will be calculated based off its sales. If it's not a component as well, then it can't be used in the assembly. But if it is, then the demand rate will be the sum of its sales and its use in production. And so you could have a sellable component that you build, and that's fine. There's an interesting product here about quarantining products and segregating them is defective. I think a lot of people use a separate warehouse for that to quarantine products. But otherwise, yeah, that could be something that you can email us to work through. It's probably a bit detailed without having a bit of a back and forth conversation. Is modeling limited to 25 products at a time? No. So we have in here 100. This is something that was added where you can select the size of the page now. I think you could have thousands of products, but it will only calculate and submit on 1,000 at a time. But what will happen is you'll end up with set 1 of 2, 2 of 2, 3 of 2. So you can just submit them as you go through. If you can only order once a week, so there's a question here about how does the stock day strategy work? If you can only order once a week, we have a lead time of 14 days, but it is only on a Tuesday each week for delivery 2 weeks later. Very good question. So the modeling page doesn't time anything. So if you're thinking I order on a Tuesday and I want to have 2 weeks stock as of Tuesday, potentially that is where the forecasting system will help you, because you could really plot out in here that we'll look at next time about planning your supply. I don't know if you want to look exactly this, but we could say that we order every 7 days, and you'll see that it plots that in exactly on a particular day. That's the replenishment takes place. So we could cover that off in the next session. Okay, so I think my voice is just about giving up on me, but just to cover off what you can look at over the next couple of weeks playing with AIM is have a look at setting up some of your data points. So the type of product that it is, the supplier, you've got the per warehouse controls that you can turn on, add product groups. And then inside of AIM, look at how many of the products are missing lead days and stock days. If you click finish, it loads the products missing those things into the modeling page. But you might want to, if I was looking at adding lead days, I'd probably do this by supplier and work. Okay, there's nothing for that supplier that's missing lead days, but you get the idea. So look at adding in some extra details, playing with maybe a particular product with the strategy. And one thing I didn't cover is you can, oh, no, I did, just forgetting it, so obviously too late at night here, but you can set up your views and you can configure these views to act as a report. So if we look at the hidden columns, there's a lot of details in here that you could use the modeling page, and there's an export button. So I could say, how many days of stock do I have? How many days of stock do I have on purchase order? That sort of thing. And you could look at what the strategy is. I want to have 10 days of stock, and I have 100 days of stock, so this is a problem. So you can save these as different layouts and export them to identify areas to focus in on. Okay, so thank you everyone for taking the time to look at AIM. Apologies for just about losing my voice all the way through that. And we'll come back to you in a couple of weeks with a gripping look at the production planning and forecasting system. We've got the next session, which is in a couple of weeks. It's up. You'll probably have the invites as well. So I look forward to talking with you more there. And yeah, send us emails with any questions or updates that you have going through. Thank you, everyone.